The morning sunlight streamed through the glass windows of the company's top floor, painting golden lines across the meeting room table. Tu Sam sat quietly at one corner, her hands gently resting on a stack of documents, her eyes occasionally glancing toward Ly, the man whose presence once made her world feel safe and warm. Ly looked as confident as ever, his deep voice filling the room as he spoke to his new secretary, a young woman with bright eyes and an effortless smile. The secretary's laughter rang out, light and melodic, blending perfectly with the soft hum of the office. It was a simple sound, innocent even, but to Tu Sam it carried a strange weight, a quiet ache she couldn't explain. From where she sat, she could see the way Ly smiled back, how his eyes softened slightly whenever the secretary made a small mistake and apologized. It was the same gentle patience he used to have with her when they first met, when life was simpler, when love was enough. Tu Sam lowered her gaze, pretending to focus on her notes, but the words blurred into meaningless shapes. Her heart felt heavier with each passing minute. The warmth she once felt whenever Ly was near now turned into a quiet coldness. She wanted to believe it was nothing, that it was just work, but the doubt had already crept in, whispering quietly in the corners of her mind. During lunch, she saw them again, Ly and the secretary, standing by the elevator, talking and laughing. The secretary brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, her cheeks slightly flushed. Ly smiled, that familiar smile that once belonged only to Tu Sam. For a moment, time seemed to stop. She turned away before they noticed her. Her heart trembled, her fingers tightened around the small lunchbox she had brought for him, the one she spent the whole morning preparing. She was about to walk up to him, but something inside her froze. She looked down at her reflection in the elevator's metal door. Tired eyes, pale face, the faint traces of a smile she tried to keep alive. "Maybe I'm just overthinking," she whispered to herself, forcing a breathless laugh. But deep inside, a small voice, fragile yet sharp, whispered back, "Or maybe he just doesn't see you anymore." That night, she sat alone by the window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She could still hear the secretary's cheerful voice in her mind, still see Ly's gentle smile. The world outside was alive with noise and light, but her little apartment felt colder than ever. And as the rain began to fall softly outside, Tu Sam closed her eyes, wondering if Ly would ever notice her silence, or the sadness hidden behind the smile she wore just for him. The next few days passed like a quiet storm inside Tu Sam's heart. She tried to act normal, smiling when Ly came home late, pretending not to notice when he replied to work messages during dinner, and forcing herself to believe that everything was just fine. But her heart, tender and trembling, whispered otherwise. Every morning she would carefully iron Ly's shirt, pack his lunch, and wave him off with the same soft smile. And every evening she would wait for the sound of his car pulling up in the driveway, only to hear him say again, "I have a late meeting tonight." That word, meeting, had begun to sound like a wall between them. One evening, while bringing tea to Ly's office at home, Tu Sam stood quietly at the door. He was on the phone. His voice was low, gentle, the kind of tone that used to be reserved for her. "Yes, Mina. Don't worry about the report. You did great today. I'll look at the file tomorrow. You've worked hard. Get some rest," he said softly, his lips curving into a faint smile. The name Mina slipped into her heart like a drop of cold water. She turned away before he noticed her standing there, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the tray of tea down on the table. Her chest tightened. She didn't want to feel jealous. She hated that emotion, that ugly feeling that made her doubt the person she loved. But it was there, burning quietly behind her calm expression. Later that night, she sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Her reflection looked tired, lonely. The city lights blurred behind her tears. When Ly came in, she wiped her face quickly and smiled, pretending nothing was wrong. "You're still awake?" he asked gently, removing his jacket. "I was just thinking about tomorrow," she murmured. He nodded, distracted, glancing at his phone again when it buzzed. Another message. Tu Sam caught the name glowing faintly on the screen. Mina. Her heart sank again. She looked away quickly before he could notice. "I made some soup for you," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you," Ly replied, still typing. "You always take such good care of me." Those words should have comforted her, but tonight they felt distant, like a kindness offered out of habit rather than love. She smiled faintly, hiding her pain, and whispered, "That's what love is for, right?" But as she turned away, her lips quivered and she bit back the tears, because deep down she wondered, was love still there? Or had it already been replaced by something colder, quieter, and unknown? The next morning, she decided she couldn't just sit and watch anymore. Something inside her had begun to stir. A quiet courage born from heartbreak. She needed to know the truth, even if it shattered her completely. And so, with trembling hands and a heavy heart, Tu Sam walked toward Ly's office, determined to see for herself whether the man she loved could still see the sadness behind her fading smile. Tu Sam arrived at Ly's company just after noon. The building, tall and glassy, reflected the sunlight so brightly that she had to squint. Her heart pounded as she stepped through the front doors. She had come before to bring lunch or pick Ly up, but this time something was different. The receptionist greeted her politely, but Tu Sam barely heard. She could already sense the tension inside her chest growing heavier with every step toward Ly's office. When the elevator doors opened, laughter echoed down the hallway, soft, feminine laughter. Mina. Tu Sam froze for a moment. That sound alone was enough to make her chest tighten painfully. As she turned the corner, her eyes found them. Ly was standing by the window, holding a folder, his tie slightly loosened. Beside him stood Mina, the new secretary, young, elegant, with a bright smile that seemed to fill the room. She was showing him something on her tablet, leaning closer than necessary. Ly laughed at something she said, his eyes soft, his voice light. It wasn't what they did. It was how natural it looked, how comfortable. For a moment, Tu Sam forgot to breathe. She wanted to turn back, to pretend she hadn't seen, but her feet wouldn't move. It was as if the world had frozen around her, and she was the only one left to feel the sharp sting of reality. "Mina, that's very creative," Ly said, smiling warmly. "You've got a good eye for detail." Her laughter rang again, bright, almost musical. "I just want to make things easier for you, sir." The word sir felt too sweet on Mina's lips, too familiar. Tu Sam swallowed hard. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down before walking into the room. "Ly," she said softly. Both of them turned. Ly's expression changed. Surprise flickered across his face, followed quickly by an uncertain smile. "Sam, what are you doing here?" "I brought you lunch," she said, holding up the small bag in her trembling hands. "Oh, thank you," he replied, stepping toward her. "You didn't have to come all the way here." "I wanted to," she answered quietly. Mina smiled politely. "You're Tu Sam, right? Mr. Ly's girlfriend?" Tu Sam nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes." The air thickened with something unsaid. Tu Sam could feel Mina's eyes on her, confident, curious, maybe even slightly pitying. She hated that look. Ly reached for the lunch bag, but Tu Sam didn't let go immediately. Their eyes met, and in that brief second she saw it, hesitation, a tiny pause in his warmth, something she hadn't seen before. Her fingers loosened. "I'll let you get back to work," she said, turning away. But as she walked down the hallway, her tears began to fall, silent, invisible to everyone but herself. In that moment, she realized something cruel and simple. Love doesn't always fade loudly. Sometimes it slips away quietly, in the space between a smile and a sigh, between one text message and another name appearing on a screen. That night, she didn't wait up for Lee. She turned off the lights, sat alone on the balcony, and whispered into the cold air. "Did you even see my eyes, Lee? Did you notice how they stopped shining for you?" And somewhere, far away, Lee was still working, unaware that the woman he once called his heart was beginning to drift out of reach. The next morning, the apartment felt colder than usual. Lee woke up alone. The scent of Tu Sam's jasmine shampoo still lingered faintly on the pillow beside him, but she was gone. No breakfast on the table, no soft humming from the kitchen, only silence. He frowned, checking his phone. No message, no call. Strange. She never left without saying goodbye. Hours later, while reviewing documents in his office, Lee found himself distracted. Every laugh from Mina reminded him of the way Tu Sam used to smile. Gentle, warm, never forced. Suddenly he realized how different those two smiles felt. One was polite, the other was home. When he came home that evening, the lights were dim. Tu Sam sat on the sofa, her eyes distant, a cup of tea untouched in her hands. "Sam," he said softly, "are you okay?" She looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you even notice me anymore, Lee? Or do you only see her?" Her words pierced through him like cold rain. For the first time, Lee saw the sadness behind her eyes, the same eyes that once glowed with trust. And he finally understood. It wasn't jealousy that hurt her most, it was being unseen. Lee stood there, frozen. The weight of Tu Sam's question hung heavy in the air. He took a deep breath and walked toward her, each step filled with regret. "Sam," he said quietly, kneeling beside her, "I see you. I've always seen you. But I got lost in my work, in trying to make everything perfect. I didn't realize I was losing us." Tu Sam's lips trembled. "You smiled at her, Lee. The way you used to smile at me." Lee reached out, gently taking her hand. "That smile meant nothing. But the way I look at you, that means everything." His eyes softened, sincere and full of warmth. "I hired a secretary, Sam, but you are my heart. No one could ever replace you." Tears filled her eyes, this time not from sadness, but from relief. For a long moment they said nothing. Only the sound of the ticking clock filled the room. Lee pulled her into his arms. "Let's start again," he whispered. Tu Sam nodded, resting her head against his chest. In that quiet embrace she knew love, once clouded by doubt, had found its light again.